Hello and welcome to the Minds on the Frontline Podcast. This podcast is dedicated to meaningful conversations that inform, educate, and inspire frontline workers, their families, and the public. Our mission is to shed light on the mental and behavioral health challenges faced by those on the front lines while providing valuable insights and real-world solutions. Minds on the Frontline is brought to you by the Frontline Strong Together 5 program. FST5 offers streamlined access to behavioral and mental health services along with crisis resources for Michigan's Frontline 5 workers and their families. This support encompasses all professional, part-time, and volunteer firefighters, EMS personnel, law enforcement officers, corrections officers, and 911 dispatchers in Michigan, as well as their immediate family members. First responders and mental health experts have collaboratively created FST5 to provide 24/7 live support, effective resources, and cutting-edge services aimed at preventing and alleviating PTSD, anxiety, depression, and other mental and behavioral health challenges related to frontline work. Need help now? If you are a frontline worker in Michigan or an immediate family member facing any crisis, whether work-related, substance abuse, depression, relationship issues, finances, or other concerns, please reach out by calling 1-833-34-STRONG or visit fst5.org for more information. I'm Jeff Lassers, one of your hosts. I'm a professional firefighter, paramedic, educator, and content creator. Minds on the Frontline is co-hosted by Mike Mattern, also a professional firefighter and paramedic. In addition, Mike is a peer support team member for his fire department and the FST5 program. Also co-hosting with us today is Scott Taylor, a retired police officer and lead peer with the FST5 program. In this episode, we are honored to welcome back Dr. Arash Javanbakht, an associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Neurosciences at Wayne State University School of Medicine. Dr. Javanbakht is the founding director of the Stress, Trauma, and Anxiety Research Clinic, or STARC, where he leads groundbreaking research on anxiety, trauma, and post-traumatic stress disorder. His work includes innovative treatments, such as the use of augmented reality exposure therapy to assist individuals suffering from PTSD. Dr. Javanbakht has played a crucial role in developing FST5, serving as its Director of Treatment and Trauma Services and focusing on providing tailored mental health support to first responders. His expertise has been recognized through features in prominent media outlets, and he is the author of the book Afraid: Understanding the Purpose of Fear and Harnessing the Power of Anxiety. During this episode, we explore the science of trauma, what it is, how it impacts both the brain and body, and why individuals react to it in various ways. Dr. Javanbakht clarifies the difference between trauma and stress, the effects of repeated exposure, and the dangers associated with unresolved trauma. We also examine innovative treatments such as augmented reality exposure therapy, along with practical lifestyle strategies and established clinical methods that assist first responders in finding relief in recovery. Most importantly, this episode emphasizes a vital message. Healing is possible, and no one has to face it alone. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn, and make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
We're doing good, man. We're glad to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got a new studio since we last sat down. You were in phase 1, where we were on a rolling cart.
Yes.
And we plug into the wall and set it all up, and now the things are a little different.
Now we've upgraded.
Looks pretty cool.
Yeah, and you're a big tech guy too, and we'll get into all that. But first, Tell everybody who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
I'm Arash Javanbakht. I'm a physician, a psychiatrist, a trauma psychiatrist. As a person, I love to write. I love to do fitness boxing. I love to do archery. I love the desert. And I have a couple of huge Great Pyrenees. And in my profession, I am a trauma psychiatrist. So I work with people of all sorts of trauma exposure, survivors of torture, human trafficking, refugees, civilians, military, and first responders has become a big part of my work. I work with first responders from all different backgrounds. I also teach in the university and I'll do research. And a lot of my research is focused again on what trauma does to the brain and the body, from the genes to the brain changes to how we can advance our treatments, including some very cool technologies and even lifestyle changes that can help with reducing anxiety and stress.
And I think that's a good opportunity to maybe get into that a little bit of what you do here in the university when it comes to research and that, because it really relates to what we talk about here today. So what do you do specifically in that angle of your profession?
So in the research, we have several projects. One is a project that we look at people who have had war exposure. How does war over the time affect the brain and the symptoms of trauma? Actually, when we look at people who have been civilians who have been exposed to war, there's overlap with first responders. These are two groups with continuous ongoing exposure to stress and multiple traumas, right? And we look and see, let's say I'm removed from the war environment now over time. How do my symptoms, how does my behavioral change, and what are the variables of risk and resilience here? What makes me more vulnerable to impact of trauma, and what makes me more resilient? With the first responders, actually, we have been using this very cool technology we will talk about later, where it basically will plug you into the matrix. You wear these augmented reality goggles, and you're in a totally different world where you can practice being in environments you're avoiding because of your hard and difficult experiences of the past.
That's amazing. And the key feature is you're providing these environments to allow the brain to occupy a space in a safe manner, but also effective way for them. They can practice getting amped up, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say I've had, because of my tough experiences, I can't even go to a grocery store now.
Yeah.
So now I bring the grocery store to my office here, where you wear the goggles, I'm next to you. I know how to do gradual exposure to these hierarchies. And these digital humans of all different diverse sex, age, range, race, appearance, body type, outfit, background come in, and you can interact with these people. And some are AI motivated, and as you said, you practice skills. You can even role play with them and practice your de-escalation skills or other skills that you need to communicate with people, and scares us away from those situations because of the difficult and tough experiences like trauma we have had in the past.
So for all the tech guys out there and the skeptics, how realistic is this?
It's so real, especially this new version. We are using Apple Vision Pro headsets. These are just dropped this year. It's so real and 3D that the other day I was wearing these goggles and I've created this. So I should be very used to it. But I kind of bumped into one of these augmented reality virtual characters and I felt it on my body.
Like your brain registered
your
it.
brain thought somebody was actually
amazing.
there.
That's
Yeah, the brain feels
like a phantom feeling, because your brain's like, I'm about to hit something. And so it sent a signal of I'm feeling that. Wow.
Yeah, and my colleague was there. So we were doing this demo video and I wanted to push them a little bit forward. So I touched them in the back. And for a second, my brain is like, is my hand going to go through them like these digital characters, or is this a real person? So especially when there's a real and unreal next to each other.
Right.
It's just actually one of my detectives who was trying this technology, she said, I know it is not real, but I cannot feel it is not real. So it's the unreal that feels real.
That's amazing.
The
amazing.
uncanny valley.
Yes, we are right there.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to that and how maybe that exposure type therapy and those types of clinical engagements are going to help people that have trauma experience.
Mm-hmm.
But let's build up to that. So, two-part question. What is trauma? How does it affect individuals? Because we're all a bit different. But also contrast is, what is not trauma?
Excellent and important question. Why? Because these days you open TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, here, there, everybody's talking about their traumas. Now, especially for the guys in your line of work, that basically is not a good feeling to see, okay, I know what is trauma. I have been through it. And now everybody on Facebook is talking about their trauma from the conversation they had with their boss or with their friend, which has been traumatic and has led to complex trauma, right? Not that we are dismissing other experiences as not at all important. Well, there are stressful experiences in life, but trauma is something that is truly and strongly a significant threat to someone's physical or sexual integrity. We are talking about war. We are talking about natural disasters, severe serious motor vehicle accidents, severe medical illness, life-threatening situations. and then the traumas you guys experience, the shootings, the fire, the domestic violence and abuse, the sexual abuse and rape. And trauma can have two types. The one type is that it occurs to me. I was beaten up by someone. I went in a fire. I almost experienced death because an explosion happened near me. But then the other sort of exposure to trauma, which is a lot more common among first responders, is the indirect exposure, which could be equally traumatic. When I go after the school shooting, clean up the scene, and I see all the gore, when I see people who have been seriously physically abused, or people in the special sex crime unit, I have a lot of detectives in my patients who have worked there for a couple of decades, and they have been exposed to horrible details of someone's sexual trauma. Firefighters, when you go to a fire, when you pull people out of a car, out of houses, and EMTs, and even with the dispatch, they hear all the horrible stories. So that is exposure to details of an ongoing traumatic experience. So that is trauma. Now you ask, what is not trauma? What is not trauma is something that is not seriously life-threatening or threatening to someone's sexual integrity for everybody. Meaning that if I am near an explosion and you are near an explosion and you are near explosion, to all of us, that's equally threatening, right? If I'm looking at a grizzly bear, if there's a grizzly bear in this room, Mike has good arms and he can handle the grizzly bear.
I just got to be one of the fastest guys.
I don't got to beat the bear, just got to beat one of you guys.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So we all are equally scared of that grizzly bear. That is trauma. But the things that majority of people don't find dangerous to their existence, then that is not trauma. So now we are talking about difficult conversations, stressful life experiences, tough divorces, loss of job. All these are now highly stressful experiences that can still affect the person, but we don't call them trauma.
So really that line is in fear for your life. There's that possible loss of life. That's kind of the line that moves it past a stressful situation into a traumatic situation.
Your life was someone else's life, which is significant in your line of work.
Yes.
Why do some people perceive that trauma different than other people? You have an exemption that the four of us in the room, there's a grizzly bear here.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm like, I like bears. I'm not afraid. Why are people different in that? How do they differentiate the perception of trauma or interpretation?
And that's a huge line of research these days because we are learning more and more about that. There's so many different variables. Starts from the genes. The genes that I inherited from my parents in terms of reaction to something that is perceived as danger is different than yours and yours. And then there are epigenetic changes, which means my genes change due to my own personal experiences, life experiences, and also my parents' experiences. We are doing research, as said, on war-exposed refugees. And we see a kid born to a refugee mother. The kid is born here, has different epigenetic composition that makes him more vulnerable to trauma impact. Then there is the past experiences, childhood trauma. If I have had exposure to trauma during childhood, trauma can impact me differently now. Then there's other experiences, let's say frequent exposure to trauma even during adult life. There's the other stresses I'm going through. If I haven't slept for 30 hours, if I am a little bit sick, and if I am dealing with some challenges at home, so my mind, my ego has some limited ability to deal with challenge. Now I'm walking into a trauma, the chronicity, and this part is important because let's say I get traumatized. Let's say I get into a terrible car accident. I was living my normal life, terrible car accident. I come out of it. I go back to my normal life. But for first responders, continuous chronic exposure to stress, like a shift work and being alone and the challenges and this and that, and then just a civilian yelled at you half hour ago, and now you are quick shift to the other task, and now exposure to trauma. And a very important part that I have been very much engaged with thinking about is, let's say there is a horrible scene and some death has occurred, and there are first responders there. One of them did not see the dead body, arrived after the dead body was covered. One of them has a family member who is the age of and sex and appearance of that dead body. One of them has had a horrible experience of their own childhood that, let's say, a father passed away and now they see the father passed away. Each of us come with a different story and background to the trauma. Like in the movies that you see, different people come at the same event from different angles. And then we create different interpretations. And the way we are touched by it is different based on the interpretation. A lot of times I hear from first responders, Like say, for a long time, they've seen it all, but then they saw a kid overdose who's the age of their own kid. And that's when they were hit hard.
Yeah, it's those hooks we've talked about. It's those little things. Like the kid could be wearing the same shoes that your kid wears.
Like triggers.
You know what I mean?
Triggers.
They're triggers, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about the trauma and when it happens, you just talked about how it changes you, mind, body, the whole way. What happens neurologically and physiologically when we experience that trauma right now? And then the second part of it is, how does it impact us down the road if we don't take care of it?
Before this, we were talking about fasting, and we were talking about the life of before the session, we were talking with Mike about the real life of a natural human. So we are not living the real life of a natural human, right? This body and this brain evolved to do a different thing, not sitting at this desk. Several thousand years ago, you and I would be fighting with the nature. So a lot of different threats happening in our
just
life.
trying to stay warm and get food.
Yes, absolutely.
Amongst everything else trying to kill you.
And stay alive, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So now trauma triggers the fear system. But I went to this that story to say we first have to understand this fear system, right? The fear system is within us to protect us against annihilation of that kind. So this is very, very deeply rooted in us and other animals. And the fear system's job is to take me to the fight and flight mode. Not the fight and flight modes of these days when I have a difficult conversation with my boss and my heart is pounding. No, there and then where the difficult conversation would lead to a fist fight and one of us would be dead or seriously injured. So that's why the body goes to fight and flight and basically brain gets ready for focus on the threat. The mind becomes narrowly focused on the danger. There's part of the brain, amygdala right here, that is the fear part. And it basically, anytime it sees something, has to decide, should I attack it or run away from it or eat it? And that part is pure animal. And it starts sending signals before you're even aware of the threat. Let's say a fast object is coming towards you. You first jump out of the way. Then you come to yourself and see, what was that fast object? Was it the car? Was it the truck? Why? Who was driving it? Why was it going fast? So that animal brain activates the whole fear system, which is basically heart pounding faster, breathing gets heavier, you're hyper-focused on anything that could be dangerous. You're not looking at the beautiful flowers, you're looking at anything. If I come to this room, I'm looking at everybody as a potential threat. What trauma does triggers the system. It's good, you need that at the moment of the heat of the trauma, and my reactions become faster, and basically your car is going gas pedal to the floor. And now trauma overwhelms this system. So immediately right after the trauma, the first few days, I'm distracted. I may be a little bit feeling dissociated and disconnected from the environment. I cannot sleep. I close my eyes and I keep seeing the scenes of what happened to me. I may have nightmares. I am scared. My heart rate is higher. So these are the things that happen immediately after trauma within my brain and my body.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's right after the traumatic event, right?
Yeah.
Well, as most of us first responders, we don't necessarily seek help right after the event.
We don't even register it as an event.
Yes.
And that's part of the chronic issue.
And I find also on a lot of that, you don't recall the details of the event for like 2 or 3 sleep cycles because you've got that self-preservation where the blood just goes to the core, it goes to your center of mass. It's survival. Which
Yes,
you talked about
absolutely.
earlier.
And your brain is trying to process and make sense of this experience.
When we do the like peer support, or I'm sure when you see people, it's down the road. They've let this trauma go sometimes months, years.
Yeah.
What happens over that time if it's left unaddressed? What happens to the brain and the body when we don't, say, maybe do a diffusing or debriefing right after, or you talk to somebody about it and we just say, oh, well, we're just going to deal with it ourselves? What kind of changes happen to the body when we leave it unaddressed?
I want to go back to what you said earlier, Jeff, about we don't consider it an incident or event, something like that.
We don't register it. Like,
Yeah.
that wasn't an incident.
Yeah.
Right.
So for a lot of times, actually, I see people 10 years later. I've been suffering for 10 years, and then all these 10 years, they thought that is a normal part of their career to have nightmares every night.
Yeah, we call that a Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
We call that a
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah, so you don't, this is not something we can help with. But going back to your question, over time, so different people have different trajectories based on all those variables that we mentioned earlier about that, how trauma can impact someone. Some brains and bodies slow down after a few days or a couple of weeks and then go back to their normal self. And this is more so in people who have just unique one episode exposure to trauma. So it's harder for first responders because then boom, another one and another one happens. And some other people just keep dealing with some levels and degrees of the symptoms. For example, the thoughts come back. Basically, the body's kind of going up and down and up and down. Sometimes when you go home, it calms down. Then you're about to go back to work after a day off. The system is starting to activate. You're starting to feel nervous. You hate to go. You don't want to drive. You just waste time driving around before you go to work, and then you go to that environment and the fear responses come back. I've had responders, they're on a scene, they're having almost a panic attack, so fear responses come up there. And then for a certain number of people, the gas pedal remains on the floor and the car doesn't slow down. So basically the amygdala is unleashed now. And the frontal cortical areas of the brain, or the hippocampus, like the memory areas of the brain that can see the context and say, hey, we are not at the fire scene anymore. We are not at the shooting scene anymore. Be safe. They cannot control this unleashed animal that is terrified.
What does that look like?
It looks in terms of symptoms.
Yeah.
So basically in terms of symptoms, now we are talking about post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. It's important to say it's not that you're absolutely fine or you have PTSD. We are not the dichotomous creatures. Basically, from the trauma exposure, you can have from 0 to 100% of these symptoms we will talk about. In my language, in clinic, we draw a line at here at 70%, and now we say, okay, from 70% up, we call it PTSD. So PTSD is not just like PTSD, you're absolutely fine. There are like 65s and 60s who are still suffering. So when people come to my clinic, I don't care about that label that DSM gives me. I look at how these symptoms are basically impairing someone's function or distressing them. But coming back to the symptoms, now there are different categories. One is that I keep having reminders of trauma coming and to me and haunting me. Basically, I have frequent nightmares. I have flashbacks. Flashbacks are like as if I'm there. Let's say a loud noise goes off and I see the explosion, I see the shooting, I smell the smells, I hear the sound. Like in veterans, a lot of times, and fire also, you smell the burning. For people who have been sexually abused, they may feel the touch on their body. They may smell the body of the perpetrator. Like the real perceptions are there. And then there's the intrusive memories. Memories keep coming. You push them away, they keep coming back. They haunt you. They're always with you. Then comes the basically avoidances. I avoid anything that can resemble my trauma. And for some people, the avoidance becomes too big because especially for first responders, majority of the traumas outside of natural disasters are human caused. So humans become associated with trauma. I had a police detective. She didn't want to go to police station. Not that she hated her colleagues. She knew that is one of the safest places to be for her. But those people in the uniform were associated with the trauma that she was there. I want to go back a little bit to the animal brain. We were not born to be afraid of guns, right? We were not born inherently to be afraid of certain things. We become afraid of things by learning, which is good, right? Back in time, you would be attacked by a grizzly bear. It would be stupid for a second time to try to go pet a bear. So you would avoid all the grizzly bears, and you would avoid all the black bears, and you would avoid all the white bears, and maybe all big fluffy animals are now dangerous. So you learn to be afraid of anything that can signal something bad may happen to me. So for this detective, now this station and the police environment is associated with the trauma exposure she had to sex crime stories that she was working on during her career.
And the link doesn't necessarily need to be logical.
Not
when
at
you
all.
say it out loud,
No.
people are like, that doesn't even sound right. I'm just messed up. And what they're not realizing is, although the connections aren't logical, that doesn't mean you're not experiencing the link between the two, causing your body to react in a way to protect yourself.
Absolutely, because it's the animal brain.
It's all self-preservation.
Yeah.
We call it going reptile.
Yes.
Because that's what you do. You're invoking that, oh, he went reptile.
Because the fear system is so primitive. People are researching the brains of rats and mice to understand about fear in my brain.
Right.
It's that primitive across different species. For first responders, a lot of times it becomes avoiding humans. So I have people who have been at home for a year. They cannot even go to grocery store. They can't go to a restaurant. They can't go to a party. They avoid anything human related because when they're around human, this brain is constantly screening for danger. And some level of that behavior is already in a lot of first responders. Like if you go to a restaurant, You sit in the back next to the door with your back to the wall where you can watch everybody, and preferably you go at a time that there aren't many people, because part of this automatic brain has learned to constantly screen.
And that's a learned behavior for what we do. We learn that.
Minimum of 2 exits in my mind at all times.
Well, that, or like I'll count doors at a hotel in case there's smoke in the hallway, or count seats.
Always.
I think to a certain extent what you're talking about, all first responders have, because it is that self-preservation. We're always going into a dangerous situation. Well, we're looking for our second, third way out of where we're at.
We're scanning the room to see who's going to be trouble, who's not going to be trouble.
And that's just sitting down and having coffee.
Yeah. And that's at a donut shop, right? Exactly.
Right. But it is. It's that we're constantly scanning for anything dangerous or something that's not right. Or we are always constantly scanning for that.
I've noticed a lot of police officers and firefighters as well, but my police officer friends really remark how they don't love going to concerts or amusement parks based on the size of the groups of people. And I agree with them.
No, 100%. We live in a small town. They have a music theater, and we go quite often. And when we go, I can tell you, I don't pay attention to hardly any of the concert because I'm busy trying to make sure my wife's safe, I'm safe. And you're looking around, all right, that guy's going to be trouble. I got to see who can I get to help me to kick that guy's butt if something goes on. It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible.
I didn't like Disney World, and we didn't even have kids yet, but I was there with my niece, and I felt like I was just on completely. What is this? Who's this?
So I was down this summer. I was at the Green Day concert at Comerica Park. Okay,
the drone concert.
So we're sitting there. A drone flies into the stadium. They don't tell us anything. The band gets pulled off the stage by security, and nobody knows what's going on. So what's my first response?
We need to move to the island.
My first response was I looked at the security guys and the cops.
Right.
That was my first look, right?
Yeah.
So I looked at those guys. They seemed pretty calm. So I'm like, all right, so this can't be too serious. But you know what my second look was? How am I getting out of here?
Yep.
Everybody's going to take the stairwells that they came down in, right? Yep. Well, the opening in the outfield where the crew can come in and out, I go, we're going right for that. I go, everybody's going to go for those stairwells. We're going for that.
To the exit.
They're trained to go to the exit. I'm looking for a secondary egress. But that's exactly I felt myself like I was having a great time at the concert, but I felt myself instantly.
It kicks in.
I snapped right into work mode. I'm like.
And when that happens, don't you it takes, and then it settles back in, you get back to it, and it's really affected negatively your experience now. Because now I'm not enjoying the moment in this cool place. I'm still on. You feel that whatever the chemicals are rushing through my body, telling my brain and body to be ready.
I'm done. I want to go home now.
Two things are happening here. This is my observation here. So one phenomenon is that you guys have a lot more exposure to the dark side of humanity. So when you are at the concert, you have a higher chance of thinking about the negative possibilities that could happen, right? Sometimes I have to remind myself as a trauma psychiatrist, listen, what you're seeing is not all of the humanity, it's the fringe of the humanity, right?
Yes.
The other part is that, so a veteran goes to Iraq or Afghanistan, they get the trauma exposure to come here. So the environment is extremely different, right? Now they're inside America and everything looks different. For you guys, especially if you're working in a small town, the restaurant where you're eating with your family is where you did a CPR on someone. So the context is the context of your work and your home are the same things. And it's very difficult to slow down because the brain is always, I'm at work now. I'm not at a party. I'm at work. I'm not at a concert. Because as a cop, you might have been on a scene of a concert in the past because there were some threats, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think our kids suffer a little bit too because
I'm about to put a chip in mine.
Well, that's what I mean is all the other kids in the neighborhood are riding their bikes without bike helmets.
Yeah.
And he wants to be like all the other kids, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. You're putting on a helmet. Right. We've seen so much happen to people that you're like, no, you're not doing that. No, you're not doing that.
And I can't create a safety factor beyond this helmet, and you will wear it.
Yes, this is the best I can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my kids look like RoboCop when they're roller skating.
Exactly.
the marshmallow guy.
Exactly.
But you're exactly right. You're always thinking about what could possibly happen. I was last summer. I'm on my tractor cutting my grass. Neighbor comes over to say hi. Typical. And I'm, hey. He goes, you expecting problems? I go, what are you talking about? He goes, you're cutting your grass. Yeah. He goes, got a gun in your waistband. And I'm like, you don't? I mean, I didn't realize. I'm in my front yard cutting my grass in a nice, safe little town. And I honestly didn't even know I had it because it's like having a watch on or whatever else. It's part of the equipment you need for the day.
So we talked about symptoms that are basically constant reminders of trauma and avoidances. And then there's I'm constantly on alert. I'm on edge. I cannot sleep. I lay down. Unless my 2-3 dogs are there watching outside, I cannot fall asleep. And somebody slams the door, I'm jumpy. That is the difficult part. And then the negative thoughts and cognitions and interpretations. Like we talked earlier about how we create different stories about our experiences. So a lot of times these stories become very painful. I had a police officer. She was sitting in my office crying because 10 years ago, she got a life-threatening illness. She recovered. She didn't die. She, a week after, is patrolling with her friend and colleague and partner, and she sees something in the corner. They go check it out. Shooting erupts. Partner dies. She's sitting in my office crying that I should have died to my illness because if I did, my partner would be alive today. The stories we create about it from outside, logically, none of us would say, well, yeah, you are the reason that he died because if you died to your illness, he would be alive now. The feelings of guilt and shame. Ideas of the world is an unsafe place. People are bad. You cannot trust anybody. I'm bad. I'm damaged good. I failed that thing. That's hindsight 2020 that you all talk as peers to people. What could I done? Or I didn't do it well. I didn't do it enough.
Doctor, you are exactly correct. I don't know one first responder that is involved in some type of a traumatic incident that hasn't second-guessed their actions. What could I have done better? It's a guilt. It's the guilt, especially if it's a tragic ending.
It's a mix with that and imposter syndrome when you're like, oh, because I'm not this. I'm supposed to be, but I'm not.
And you forget all those 99 other situations you saved someone's life. I even sometimes tell people that, listen, first of all, can we also refocus on the things that you have succeeded in, how many lives you have saved? On the other side, also, what percent of CPRs in someone's house are supposed to be successful? We know the data, right?
And then what's going on with this person? How long were they down?
Right.
The expectations need to be commensurate with the situation.
Yeah, now if you're religious, or depending on whatever ideology you have a belief that the world is fair and good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. Now you're in special sex crime unit. How do you make sense and meaning of these experiences? And then a lot of people go down the rabbit hole of these negative thoughts. So the constellation of all these symptoms plague someone's life, and then depression comes, then alcohol comes. This is some dance to remember, some dance to forget. People drink to forget these experiences. And that's how it becomes very debilitating.
I definitely see the guilt is probably that heaviest.
Yeah. It's our automatic reaction.
Well, I think that's the heaviest thing that every first responder carries is the guilt.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? I think
irrational even.
If you had to pick that one emotion that really fills that backpack with weight that you have to carry around, it's that guilt.
And like you said, most of it is irrational.
Yes.
You're trying to justify what happened or what didn't happen.
It's like you're balancing this equation, and if I assume all this guilt, then it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You tried. We really need an explanation. We are a species that wants explanations, and if the explanation is I'm guilty, let be it. Then I drink and I feel less guilty, but 2 hours later I'm feeling guilty because I was drinking, and then
and
then you're feeling guilty because now you're maybe isolating from your family. You're not, you know what I mean? That's what I mean. It's not just the guilt of the call.
Yes,
it's the guilt of how you have reacted after the call.
You hit it earlier about the fact finding, and as first responder, what we need to know why this happened or why this didn't happen, and
whether it's an illusion or not.
Exactly, we make it up, you need to justify it.
We've really done a good job of kind of really setting the stage for trauma, but we'd be remiss without talking about what we can do about it.
Yes.
And I think when it comes to especially first responders and the no BS type of personalities we have, we like relevant to what we do, evidence-based. You got to prove to me it works, and it's cost-effective because I'm not a millionaire. I could just go to a retreat, which would be awesome in some of these places I've seen. But give us, what are the effective, data-driven, and cost-effective approaches to treating all this whole spectrum of trauma? Because even though some things wouldn't be considered trauma, people do need to seek ways to modify that. So anything from lifestyle to clinical.
A lot of times I say people, you don't have to continue suffering, and you didn't have to suffer the past 10 years. You just live once. And I was telling one of my patients the other day, you're 42 and you will not be 42 forever. couple of years ago, a group of producers came and they were doing a documentary and about trauma. And I brought one of our responders to talk to them. And he said something that I didn't remember at the moment. He said, I had talked to different people, tried different things, and I was told that, well, this is your life from now on. You got to deal with it. That's just PTSD is your life and your new life. When I talked to this doctor at the end, he smiled and he said, we'll fix it. At that moment, quote, I felt my feet, I stood on them, and I fought and I fixed it. So not that Arash, did fix it. He did fix it because now he knew there are things that can be done about it. If there is one thing that can be my message today is there are a lot that can be done. We don't have to continue suffering with nightmares and flashbacks and being disconnected from the whole world. So there are things that one can do in their own life, right? The first thing is having a balanced life. It's very hard for you guys. How can we find that? You can be a better advisor on that than I am because you know the life of a first responder. But knowing that there are moments in life that you can disconnect from work. Like my work is not as stressful as yours, but it's stressful because of all the trauma work and research and this and that. That 1 hour that I'm hitting the punching bag, I am not at work. I'm totally there. So these tiny respites, even 1 hour that I am fully drowned into something that I enjoy or can absorb me, whether it's, I don't know, playing guitar or going for a walk with my dog or going sitting in the desert. We don't have desert here. I love the desert.
But the key being to be fully immersed, and it's almost like a meditation.
Absolutely. Be mindfully there. And by mindfulness, I don't mean like having candles and weird music in your basement. No, you're fully there. You see the trees, you feel the water, you smell the smells, and you hear the sounds. We can talk about mindfulness
That's
forever.
why I ride my motorcycle, because if you're not mindful, you're dead. So it forces you to be locked in. There is no cell phone. There's nothing going on. If you don't pay attention, you're going to die. And I'm forced to be in that mode, which helps me so much.
And you're in the zone.
Yeah.
It's like the rock climbing. And that brings me to the other thing we can do is kind of resetting this animal. The fear system, the sympathetic nervous system, there are ways to reset it. One of them is exercise. I always say to my patients, exercise is your best treatment. See it as your rehabilitation. See it as part of your treatment. This is not, because most times you tell people exercise, they're like, well, I'm too busy with this. The only thing that will never leave you, your family may leave you, your car will leave you, your job will leave you, the day you leave your job, a week later you're forgotten. The only thing that will never leave you is your body until you die. So that should be the highest priority for investment, exercise. Especially we know cardio does a lot with basically causing growth in these other parts of the brain which are involved in leashing the animal, the amygdala, reducing the amygdala intensity. Exercise is exposure to physical symptoms of anxiety. And I say it's important to find what you can love. I hate treadmills. You can never convince me to be on the treadmill for 1 hour, but put me in my boxing gym with my buddies, I can be there for 2 hours. Right. Finding something you can do, and do as long as you can do. 5 minutes is better than none, as long as your heart rate goes up. Then there's social life. If I only have 2 friends, if I break up with one of them, I've lost 50% of my social network. We actually had a study with people in the war zone in Ukraine. First of all, that's very high level of exposure to trauma, constant bombing every day, and about 50% past threshold for PTSD. The most important variable we found that protects you against PTSD is absence of loneliness. Like the worst thing is loneliness. So having a social network, whether it's colleagues or friends or peers or family, someone you can talk to.
Sharing trauma makes it easier.
Sharing trauma or even sharing life.
And I think it helps too is when you share those things at work, there's somebody there who's had some close. I found it with the kids, right? Yeah. Where you're like, listen, this is what he did last night, and they're, let me tell you, this is how we did it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it does help to share that commonality of I'm not. The in
bond
this.
Is there.
Yes, I'm not at this by myself.
On the inverse of that, what if you have a social circle that are civilians, right? So not avoidance, but you can have a conversation with your civilian friends, and that trauma kind of goes to the back. You kind of don't think about it because you're not bringing it up. I'm not going.
Could be your bowling buddies. We're talking about bowling.
Yes,
right?
Yes,
you're disconnected.
Exactly. You're disconnecting. You're thinking about other things, normal things. You're thinking about normal things. I find personally for that they have a a group of civilian people that I don't want to talk about work. I don't want to talk
Yes.
about what I did.
Yeah.
I want to talk about did the Tigers win yesterday?
Yeah.
I want to talk about bowling. I want to talk about whatever. That is for me is a big help to process this stuff.
That's extremely important because like this animal brain is a social brain and it sees other people around me are okay, which signals to me that maybe we're okay. So now we'll go to other areas that are like we are starting to learn science of it. We are not, now I'm talking more personal experience than science. I want to make sure I'm clear about that. I've learned that experiences that are thrilling but not dangerous give a boost to the basically reset the sympathetic nervous system. So there was time I got into like an ice bath and I put this the thing in outside of my tiny pool outside on my porch in the winter, and I would just go there in it for like 40 seconds. I couldn't do more in the morning. But what that did was my body was facing what? Possibility of death,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And that would reset my fear system to, okay, what is real danger? So now my difficult conversation with my boss is not going to kill me. So I am not very comfortable with height. When I'm on an edge on Grand Canyon, I feel that. So, and for several hours or days after that, I feel calmer because now I have reset what is really dangerous.
You
It's the
gave
same
it
thing.
something to compare to.
Yes.
Right, and I think the ice bath is a great one because you're giving this safe way of like, because mammals hate being cold and we
Yeah,
hate being wet
yeah.
like that, right? So
Yeah.
what better way to stimulate your fear response than to get in a sub 40 degree bucket of water and sit there as long as you can and then get out and try to warm yourself up mentally.
It
Right.
works.
But it totally
it works, dude.
And
It works.
But it's not just, and it doesn't just work for the reasons we've been told with the endorphins and all the chemicals and feeling good. I love that you pointed out this extra layer of it showed you what real
Danger.
fear is.
Yes.
Real danger. Not
Well,
every time I see this guy at work, he has something to say, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
it's affecting you, right? Or whatever it is, that the things that bother you throughout the day. It just goes, whatever, dude. You're not a bucket of
other
cold
thing-
water.
The other thing it does is that, first of all, I don't recommend going in that Michigan winter unless your physician allows you. But cold showers.
Yes.
What they do is that, the other thing they do is that it's an absolute moment of mindfulness because if you're shivering under the shower, you're not thinking about anything else.
And I've noticed doing the ice baths too, you purposely have to work at controlling your breathing.
Yes.
There is nothing else in this world that you're thinking about than getting those breaths. You know what I'm saying? It really focuses on breath work. It focuses right on yourself and what you're doing.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's like you're purposely, I know I'm putting myself
Yeah.
in this danger.
And there's lots of
Yeah.
data with this. We've talked with Dr. Duadkar and his work with Wim Hof. And
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
very impressive that there's data going, no, this will reset you. And
Yes.
notice how he hasn't talked about one medication,
Yes.
one therapy
Right.
session.
Right.
He's saying eat good food, move your body, and disconnect from your stresses. This is like what my grandma would tell me.
Yeah, yes, and it works. And you know what? Live a normal human's life. We were talking earlier about fasting.
Yeah, live like a human. Learn to human.
Yeah, when we were back in time, we weren't eating sugar and pop and soda and breads and
Certainly
every
not in the double-digit grams
3
per hour.
hours,
No.
every 3 hours.
Right.
So I have learned when you don't eat for extended periods and you eat healthy, you are avoiding these ups and downs of glucose that activate the fear system, and sympathetic nervous system has to constantly reset itself. And then you mentioned mindfulness. I want 1 minute of your time to do a mindfulness practice, which I do with a lot of my people. So pay very close attention and with your fingers show me how many sounds you're able to hear in this room right now.
Fan is really loud.
Yeah, I can hear the fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can hear my heartbeat.
Okay.
The fan.
Look around. See how many colors you see in this room. Just show me with your hands. Shades of
double
color.
Double digits.
Double
Look,
digits.
no. See each of them.
Okay.
Touch your shoes. Not touch shoes. Touch your sleeve. Feel the texture as detailed as you can. How soft, how rough, what's the temperature? Feel that. Now feel your shoes with your feet. Feel every single inch of it. There are parts that there's more pressure. There's parts that there's less pressure. There's a part that your foot is touching the floor. You feel the ground. And there are even parts of foot that are not touching the shoe. You feel that? So during this tiny Experiment. How much did you think about the past and the future?
Nothing.
Zero.
So we are a species that is capable of reflecting on the past and planning for the future. That's amazing. But the problem has become, even at this very moment that you and I are talking, part of you is not here, part of me is not here. I'm thinking about what's coming after and what happened earlier this morning and this and that. So, but the reality is that the moment I came to this room and said hi, and the moment I will leave and say goodbye, they don't exist. The only real moment in my life and your life is this very moment, which is very safe. So this mindfulness basically uses our senses, bring us to here and now, which is reality from the la-la land where the pains are.
Yeah.
Unplug from the Matrix, man.
Yeah, that's pretty deep. That's pretty deep.
So the other part is when we are constantly constantly exposed to adversity, our focus redirects itself onto adversity. We start to miss out on the good things. I said when you're in that like there's a shooting scene, you don't see the flowers, you see the threat.
Right.
Now you go home, you don't see the flowers at home. You don't see the family. You don't see. If I have an argument with my wife, I may for the next couple of hours forget all the good things we have in our relationship or the cool, fun dinner we had last night, right? Because you refocus. And if the arguments are a lot, then it's hard to remember all the good things. So intentionally, basically trying to remember the good things, the gratitude thing, right? It works by the way of balancing. We're not trying to be cheesy. It works by balancing basically my approach and my attention towards the things which I have in life, which are good in my life. You have a career, you have an income, you have family, you have a couple of friends, you have your backyard. The other day I was telling my wife that, listen, I sometimes have to remind myself, look, I have a house that I bought and I have a beautiful backyard and that flower bed, we have made it. A lot of people don't have that. And for first responders, I keep reminding them, remember, why are you doing this? When you started, why did you start doing this? It's not the highest paying job. This is not the safest job. You had a reason. For a lot of people was, I want to help people. I want to do service. I want to protect others. I want to care. Now, that's your compass. Compass sometimes gets muddy and lost. Pull it up and remember why you're doing it and how important you are. In reality, again, I'm not trying to be cheesy. Because you exist, there are several people who are alive now. And their family and their children, every single one of you 3 people. There are people, their family, their children, their grandchildren are alive and enjoying life because of what you did and what you've done. So when you think about that one CPR that failed, you remember you have to reset your attention because you have done a lot that I wouldn't dare doing. A lot of people, majority of people would not even dare being where you are, running into the fire or like bullets are coming at you and you have your hand on someone's jugular to prevent the bleeding. And these are stories I've really heard from people. So remembering that aspect of the pulling out the compass and remembering why I'm here, a lot of times is a big factor of resilience.
I love that.
That's great.
I love that
fantastic.
metaphor.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Those are great things that I can do at home. Any human being can do, and they're just good practice, I think, for everybody. Move, eat good, have a good social network, be grateful, be in the moment. These are things that really it's that simple sometimes, right? But there's also some clinical options that people should seek. Up to might even include medications, might include therapies. Go over the spectrum of what's available for the people that have had trauma, that want to seek help, that are doing these things, or could need help getting there through clinical experience.
I'm glad you asked because there's a lot that can be done when the PTSD has kicked in and lifestyle changes cannot do it. And these are all evidence-based treatments, which means hundreds and thousands of people have experienced these in highly controlled environments of clinical trials, and we have found that they are working in reduction of symptoms compared to not doing anything. Part of it is therapies, basically the talking cure. You sit with someone and process their memories. So there are different ways of doing it. One is basically going through the memories, parsing them out and processing them, and basically helping the brain understand this memory is not something here, that when it's not the reality of this moment, that anytime I remember it, I have a panic attack. This is from there and then, and here and now is separate from there and then. That's part of psychotherapy. Other parts of therapies focus on those perceptions and interpretations we talked about that I've created about the world and myself that lead to more and more pain and suffering. We challenge those thoughts. really, is this true that if you had died due to your illness, your friend would be alive now? Is this really true that you're a bad person because this and that happened in your life? And that helps a lot. Basically, we change the way the person thinks. And it's not that we are doing anything magical, because there's an expert therapist who has done this many times and knows how these thoughts work, sits with the person and helps them to go through them and process them. I will say when you go to therapy, it's important for you to not be a passive person there. To go there and say, this is the problem, this is what I want solved. And that helps a lot. But then there are the real world challenges, right? People still, we can do these therapies, process the memories, reduce the flashbacks and nightmares. A lot of times people keep avoiding the real world. I've had some of my first responders who have been in therapy, still they can't go to grocery store, they can't go to a restaurant because the brain has associated those environments with danger. So the best treatment, I always say, the way over fear is through fear. You have to do the exposure, which means you have to go to grocery store, gradually do the exposure. Well, sometimes it's hard, right? Because it's not easy to have the therapist, which is the social safety cue, be there with you. That becomes challenging, right? Let's say I tell you, hey, you're afraid of dogs, go expose yourself to dogs in the dog park. It's hard. It's doable if you go with a friend, but it's hard. That's why we have, basically, to help our first responders, started creating this new technology. We use augmented reality. So everybody's familiar with VR, virtual reality. You wear the goggles, you're in a different world. Augmented reality basically is a new wave. It's the Tony Stark stuff, the Iron Man. So basically, you wear these goggles.
And thank you for bringing this. This is cool stuff.
We tried it before we started here, and it is amazing.
Yeah, it's very cool. So basically, this is the battery, and this is the headset. You wear the headset on your face, and you will basically, I cannot
put it on Scott. Scott, take your headset off.
There we go, Scott. Get in there.
Get him in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Plug in.
So now Scott is wearing it. I'm gonna set it up for him.
And that's an Apple Vision Pro, for those of you who don't know. This isn't like he made it in his basement. You can buy this, and then you have created scenarios of situations that people can, quote, walk into without physically be. So if I'm scared of spiders, you could put a spider in front of me.
Yes.
On the table. So augmented reality being you're taking what's physically here and adding digital characters, backgrounds, colors to what exists, whereas virtual reality is you're entered the video game.
Yes. Like Scott, you can see me when he's wearing the headset. So we basically bring the grocery store to my office. We bring the house party. We bring the restaurant. So you wear the goggles. We turn this room to a grocery store, and there are grocery shelves, and then one woman comes from that door, digital doors in. And you see me, you see that woman, you can walk around, and then someone else comes, join this woman, and they're having a conversation, and more people come, and we gradually crowd this grocery store where you can do your shopping. And they feel so realistic that, like, I had a detective with PTSD earlier last week trying this technology. This just came in. We have been working on this. We were using other headsets, but this is so realistic. 3D visuals and 3D sounds, and you can walk around and you see me and you see the digital human. She was really having those fear responses to all of these digital characters that she would be afraid of in life. Not that we enjoy making people scared, but we can help basically people go through those fears and overcome.
Right.
Basically, I gradually help them be comfortable. I had one of my first responders. She came and said, well, I'm doing too much grocery shopping online. Can we go to the grocery store? Scott is really
Scott's
excited.
trying to grab something right
You
now.
okay, pal?
Yeah, right?
No, you got the music going. I want to see what the project
If you take it off, it will just stop. So
I was trying to get in all your photos to see what you're up to.
So there's this.
That's amazing.
It's unbelievable.
So I was telling this patient earlier. She came and said, "Hey, I'm doing too much grocery shopping online. Can we do the grocery store? Oh, my sister has a party. Can we do the party as a scenario? So we have a party. We have a bar, restaurant. We have a police station. We have a fire. So we have, for a lot of people with trauma, it's hard to be back in the work environment. I have a cop. They cannot even go for the police medical. They're off work now, but they're terrified of being there. So now I put one cop in front of them. And then I can type what that cop will say. So you will have a conversation with this digital person. And then at the next layer, we have AI humans. So this human is fully automated.
So for people that maybe can connect this to video games, an NPC, a non-player character.
Yes.
But it's been given an algorithm to integrate basically like a chat bot with you.
Absolutely.
And that algorithm that it's going is trying to poke you for a very specific reason, whether it's trying to overwhelm you, fight with you, or just communicate.
Yeah, or just have a random conversation with the random person you just met, because that's difficult for a lot of people also. Then we can tell this AI human can be a little bit more intrusive. Can you be a little bit tougher? Or we were shooting this video demo, and I pretended I'm a cop and I want to practice de-escalation. I said, can you be a difficult civilian to whom I'm giving a ticket? And she grilled me. And at some point I would be like, can you be tougher? And she would go tougher. Or I would have a job interview practice, any kind of practice. And they feel so real that I myself, I've created this, but still my body bumped into one of these AR humans and I felt it on my arm.
You registered it as That's crazy.
It's amazing.
So I could totally see the application, because what you're saying, again, is to meet fear with fear.
Yes.
To go through the fear, then will decrease the reality of what it's actually doing to you. Recognize it's not real. And work your way to a more healthy lifestyle. And because we are such visual creatures, our amygdala fires based on what we see, we're going to control what you see. We're going to put the dangerous dinosaur. You're afraid of dinosaurs. We're going to put a dinosaur in front of you, and we're going to show you that it's not going to hurt you. That's an oversimplification.
We use this for
tricking the brain.
No, we use it for fear of spiders. Everybody with fear of spiders, everybody, in less than 1 hour was able to touch a real-life tarantula.
No way.
That's how effective it is. The lady I talked to you about,
I don't want to tell him my fears, because he'll put it in front of me.
No, it's like the patient, the cop I mentioned earlier, she went and did grocery shopping after we did this. For a year, she was doing grocery shopping online. So it does basically create that realism that the brain. One of my patients said, I know it's not real, but I cannot feel it is not real.
But that's what's so cool. Is like, you're not injecting anything.
No.
You're not telling me I need to do something every day. You're just giving me a way to almost work this out.
And this is your real world functioning that you're helping with.
Yeah.
What I'm very proud of here is that this is a technology we are the only ones who have in the world. We have created this, and for our first responders in this state.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
So your colleagues who come here are the only ones in the world who have access to this cutting edge technology.
Well, if somebody wants to maybe learn more about that, and especially in Michigan, how do they reach you?
They can look up the FST5 website, and they can also just Google my name, and you can find me easily.
Right. It's going to be easier for them to spell FST5.
Is that his last name?
Easier than Arash Javanbakht.
FST5.org, folks. FST5.org.
Yeah, and FST5.org has all the other resources, as well as basically linked to us and technology.
Later today, I'm going to go down and try this, but I think it's something that it's amazing to hear what you're doing, see what you're doing.
Yeah, I think we're going to do a whole episode specifically on this, kind of giving the overview and going over like maybe some of your evidence you've identified as well, and getting people some real help. So what about medications? Because a lot of people are on them. They're overprescribed in a lot of people's opinion. In a lot of ways, people need them. So give us the real answer on when meds are necessary.
So I'm a psychiatrist. I am the pill guy. And I told you all these other things before I came to medication, right? Because all these other resources we have and all the treatments we have. But still, medications sometimes are necessary. And every time I want to talk about medications, I start with the stigma. The medications we use for PTSD specifically are not dangerous, are not addictive, are not going to change your personality, are not going to change the person you are not going to change your thinking, are not zombifying you, and you can stop them anytime you want. If you stop them, the symptoms may come back. The same way if you stop the blood pressure medications, the blood pressure may go back up. So these are important to know. We are using the lightest, softest medications for PTSD in mental health, because PTSD, anxiety, depression, they're very easy medications. What they do is that basically they help the brain utilize its own limited neurotransmitters or chemicals more efficiently. We are not adding something to the brain. Basically, that reduces the intensity of the emotional reactivity. Basically, the intensity of my fear and anxiety and panic comes down to a level I can more logically engage in life and practices we mentioned, and at least go to the gym or be engaged in my therapy. And we don't have to be on them forever. I say to people, you're not marrying this medication. You can stop it anytime you want, but I don't recommend you just randomly go off of the medications because the symptoms may come back. A lot of times we use them. There's strong evidence that medications, when they're needed, they work. And, well, side effects do exist. Yes, a medication that works for me may not work for you. And when I start people on medications, I tell them, we'll do the lowest dose that works for you. And if you had side effects, I'm not stupid. I don't want to remove some problem by adding another problem. We'll change it because we have so many different options for treatments.
I think that's good to hear. I mean, that's one of the biggest fears is when people go to get help, they're worried it's just going to go right to medication.
They're going to treat it like a standard of care.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and here's your pills.
Here's your pill.
Well,
Move it on your way.
And for us, psych meds. Those are scary words. Are you off your meds? Are you off your meds? Yeah, that's behavioral.
Yes.
I mean,
And it
it's
seems
scary.
like the best healthcare provider, and I mean that objectively, starts with the least invasive way to address the problem to see the reaction without going overstepping.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You got a bad back, you start with physical therapy.
Right.
Then
You
move
don't
on
jump
to-
into a surgery or
There,
shots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and these pills, as I said, specifically the medications we use for PTSD and depression and trauma impacts are among the lightest medications. I would compare them to your Motrin in terms of like the risks that these medications cause.
Fantastic.
That's great. No, it's good to hear. I think people need to hear it.
Absolutely. Well, take us out with some final advice for people that either have trauma, have experienced trauma, they think they might need help.
First of all, I want to say I truly very much appreciate all of you guys. It has been an honor for me to work with first responders. I say this from the bottom of my heart because you guys are, as you said, no BS population, and you've put your life on the line for some good cause. Second thing, if you are suffering, you don't have to have nightmares and flashbacks every day and every night and miss out on your kids' games and family reunions and gatherings, unless you hate that uncle and you don't want to go to the party. But you don't have to suffer. There are many ways you can be helped. And even a 20% change, 30% change, even if we cannot eradicate all the problems, that still goes a very long way.
That's excellent.
Well said, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you
have
for
a great
coming.
day.
Thank you for having
Go
me.
break his brain in the old AR machine.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Minds on the Frontline podcast. We have more great content coming out soon. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. And make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and have a great day.